All right. So, if you didn't know, some big news came out. John Crist was accused, comedian. If you don't know who that is, he's a comedian, famous for like church mom or Christian lady does whatever, um, church shopping, like doing some parody stuff, and kind of like plying on that homeschooled slash kind of blimey cow shtick, but Christian comedian just exploded onto the scene. He's incredibly popular right now. Well, maybe not anymore because of the news. Some allegations about misconduct with women. Apologized. He canceled everything. He had a tour coming up, Netflix special on the tour. Canceled it all. So, apologized. And that's in the wake of several things that have happened this year, 2019, for kind of Christian public figures. You had Marty Sampson towards the beginning of the year, claiming that he doesn't have, like, that doubting his faith in a significant way. You had Joshua Harris, I was never a Christian, I was just playing a role, and divorce his wife, leave his church. And then you had the kind of kerfluffle that happened between John Crist and not John Crist, but John Cooper, frontman of Skillet, legendary kind of Christian rock guy, in Skillet, confronting on Instagram, Facebook, social media, Marty Sampson's doubt about faith, and the two of them kind of going head on against each other. And then Kanye drops Jesus is King, sparking another form of kind of Christian debate about what it means to be a Christian leader in the front, because his last album was not Christian in any way. And then all of a sudden, I think it was 1 year, and he's leading a church and stuff, and it's just sparked some things. And then now you have John Crist, allegations of sexual misconduct, right? And it just kind of it emphasizes this question: what does it mean to be a Christian out in the world, in front of everyone? Because you have, in the instance of Marty Sampson, John Cooper, Joshua Harris, and John Crist, this thing of that being a Christian is part of their persona, being that homeschooled son of a pastor in the instance of John Crist, it's part of their character that they kind of portray on stage. It's part of their brand, right? And so as a result, they're forced into a position of kind of pretending in some ways. And that's something Joshua Harris and Marty Sampson both talked about extensively, of that they felt like they were constantly being put into a role when they were in public, and then in private having major doubts, questions, and just not knowing how to reconcile that. And then in the instance of Kanye, where the character he portrays himself on stage, or at least up until now, has been the over the top, too much, taking it to 11, telling a disabled person in a wheelchair to get up, right? Because of his ego, announcing that he was going to run for president in 2020 from stage, the clothing lines, and the marrying Kim Kardashian, like just all this stuff, the disrupting Taylor Swift's award speech and whatever, right? Like he just has that of that everything he does is at 11. No calm, no chill. And so of course I think if he does shift gears into Christianity, it would immediately result in an album drop. And regardless of what you feel about the artistmanship, I've heard a lot of criticism about it being less than number one, I guess, as far as the rest of his, lyrically, musically. But whatever. Like, he only does things that, like, I wouldn't be surprised if this did result in him teaming up with Phil Vischer to do a remix of Silly Songs with Larry. I wouldn't be surprised to see if he did something with the 116 Click here pretty quickly, or teaming up with somebody like that, simply because he doesn't back down. Like, he doesn't have an off switch, I guess you could say. Him saying, like, he's William Shakespeare, he's the greatest artist of all time, right? All of that noise and all that hype. And being a comedian with John Crist, you have that energy that they're supposed to always project, and him being a single guy out on the road by himself most of the time. Something that pastors that tour a lot, or evangelists that tour a lot, will say is that one of the hardest things about being out on the road is that lack of accountability. If they're doing a speaking tour, a book tour, and so many of them will take one of the men from, like an elder from their church with them, or they'll only travel exclusively with their wives, or things like that, in order to kind of nullify that challenge, because any hotel you check into has cable, and cable has the adult channels, and you're anonymous unless somebody knows who you are specifically, like they've seen you on the front of a book cover or something. You can have private liaisons with whoever, prostitutes or whatever, and no one would know about it, simply because you're a strange man in a strange town. Like, nobody would think weird. And then one of the interesting facts about Christian conferences is that that's the moment when Christian hotel, or not Christian hotels, but when hotels will experience the highest bumps in their adult film content purchases. And so something that X3 Church will do is they'll go around, they'll slip things underneath the doorway of hotels that are hosting large amounts of Christian leaders or whatever at a conference, to remind them to stay pure. That essentially, at the end of all the rhetoric, at the end of all the everything, we're all still human beings, and no matter where you go, sin has set a trap for you and wants you to fall into it. And your flesh wants to fall into the trap. It sees it, knows the bait's there, and just wants to bite. And that's true for every single person, no matter who you are. Low level, average Joe, all the way up to the high level Christian personalities, Christian leaders, and whatever, right? Doesn't matter. Down below, all the way up, there's a trap set for you. And the enemy, I guess, the enemy knows exactly what kind of bait to put on it. And for most of us as human beings, sex, greed, and affirmation, encouragement, are the three things that we will do just about anything in order to have. Because those are very satisfying. Getting compliments, getting sexual gratification, or getting stuff and money and whatever. So it's, those traps, sin, and like, it bats a really high percentage. So it's something we have to be on our guard all of the time. And I wondered, in a private conversation, not one of my videos, but in a private conversation, we were talking about whether Kanye really has turned himself around. And that, is it possible for a person with that kind of a personality that's so frenetic, and that kind of a platform that's so visible, is it possible for them to change their lives? Because of the fact that when you've built a brand on being eccentric like that, that you're expected to do strange things and whatever, you're expected to do things at high energy. Is anyone going to take you seriously? Is anyone going to really consider that what you're doing is legitimate? Are they just going to blow you off and say, yeah, you're just going through a phase, right? Is it possible to change when you're at that level? And I'd say, of course, anything is possible with God, but in order for you to change, it usually requires a regression out of the spotlight for an extended period of time. And that's what we saw with Marty Sampson, getting connected with some Christian apologists that have helped him in a lot of ways, or with the various other instances of successful recovery from moral failure in ministry, is that they spend a considerable amount of time out of the spotlight. Even the Apostle Paul spent years out of the way that he discusses in Galatians before he comes on the scene and becomes the Apostle Paul that we know. So I think we do need to have more respect for the calling it quits for a minute and just spending time in solitude with God alone in our daily lives to prevent major moral failures. But also we need to have more respect for the ones that do the major retractions as well, so that and be more willing to receive them on the way back too, because Christ is a God of redemption as much as he is one of preservation too. So I think that's the thing. Heartbroken for John Crist, hoping that he recovers well and that he comes back strong, and I'm looking forward to it.